Hey, everyone. So, are AI agents unionizing? I don't know. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Man, where did this week go? It was a crazy week, but it went so fast. It's like a blur in my mind. But I'm happy for us to be here on Friday. I hope you've got great plans for the weekend. I do. It's supposed to be nice down here in South Florida for a change. So I may even get out on the boat and do something. But until then, we've got a lot to cover today on the gang. We've got some of my favorite gang members on here with me. We've got this is the West Coast, East Coast, the Coastal Elite lineup, right? Coming at you out on the West Coast. First of all, she is our editor, radio host, analyst, marketing guru, and everything else, our favorite Lisa Martin. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hey, Alan, doing well. How are you?
Very well. It's good to see you out up here. I like the look with the glasses and the stripes. It's
Thank you.
happening.
And I can
Happening.
see it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, that always helps. Always helps. Speaking of seeing, perched high atop Silicon Valley, where nothing gets done without his purview of it. It's our editor at large, Jon Swartz. Hey, Jon, how are you?
I'm good. It was a crazy week and it was overwhelming, but as a wise man from Harrison, New York has said, it beats the alternative of not enough news.
That's right. Speaking of the wise man of Harrison, New York, he is the dean of Techstrong as well as Harrison. He's our chief content officer. He's also counting down the days to opening day at Yankee Stadium. Someone got him tickets.
This is true.
Our chief content officer, Mike Bizard. Hey, Mike.
We might have some single-digit weather here this weekend, but after that, it's looking good. Spring's here.
All right. Spring's eternal. And everyone thinks they're a World Series contender at this stage of the game.
That's true.
Not us Giants fans. Anyway, carry on.
Well,
I do.
your record is still 0-0, Jon, just like everyone
right.
else.
I like your
You're tied for first. You're also tied for
One
last.
day.
But
Exactly.
anyway, guys, it's a great Friday to be here on the gang. We've got a couple of good segments we're going to cover. Mike, why don't you kick us off? I teased it a little bit. Are AI agents looking to unionize? Do they have rights?
So every time we turn around lately, somebody is launching an AI agent, and there's going to be a debate about whether or not I need an AI agent from every software provider or whether I'll get something from somebody who has a platform that manages multiple applications. But these things are going to be pervasive. But a debate has emerged, and I think it got started with the folks at Workday when they announced that you could manage your quote-unquote agents through their HR application. And that started this whole conversation about, well, is an agent going to be an employee? Is this somebody or something that I am going to hire for X number of hours a week to perform a task? There are at least a half a dozen other models for paying for AI agents, including outcomes and traditional software licensing. But Lisa, this conversation is starting to pick up, and I don't know what you're seeing out there, but from my perspective, it's the wild, wild west.
It is literally, especially where Workday is just down the street from me here in Silicon Valley. It's such an interesting topic because one of the first things that popped into my mind was who's going to pay the employee tax? But we're seeing role-based agents versus task-based agents doing a lot of jobs, recruiting expenses on the part of Workday's Illuminate, for example, succession optimization, and a lot of these agents that are working today are following step-by-step instructions like an employee would. Workday's CEO, Carl Eschenbach, I remember him back from the VMware days, says, task-based agents have to evolve into role-based agents. That's what Workday is kind of differentiating themselves on, which contain this configurable set of skills that give them more autonomy and better able to support humans in their roles. But it does beg the question of, are they going to be treated as employees with some of the tasks that are being offloaded from humans to them? How are they coexisting together. It's an interesting debate. He also introduced a suite of AI agents to its lifecycle management platform for ERP applications. And the goal is to augment individuals. So I think there's a message there that needs to be really, really clearly defined from enhancing augmentation versus replacing on the human side.
Alan, when I look at this, and my cynical nature comes into play here, and the software vendors have been trying to put their hands deeper into the pockets of businesses for as long as I can remember, and there was always this case that says we're going to price this based on value to you as the company. But is this just another effort here by the software providers to kind of experiment with a different business model that maybe drives more revenue to them, but increases our total costs in ways that are not really sustainable?
Look, software companies want to make money like girls want to have fun, right? As someone once sang. But that being said, this one's a little different, and it's been tried before. But I think the value prop here is by using these agents, and this bleeds into our B block, by the way. By using these agents, are you using less people? Because when you look at most businesses, their most significant costs are people. I mean, I've been a founder and a leader, of companies for executive companies for many, many years. Your biggest costs are people, always, unless you're in something very, you know, manufacturing intensive where uh, supplies cost, but it's mostly people. So if you're telling me that the right metric to measure these agents' value is my decrease in people cost, well, that's not productivity. That's not, that's a whole different scale, if you will. And I think, I think people are going to swallow it. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of business executives already have swallowed it. They're already thinking, "Ooh, this AI is going to let me lay off a couple of heads. I'm going to have more people." And, they're wrapping their hands in glee. But so that's the metric here, and and for the first time, this truly is potentially true, right? I mean, this could be a reduction of workforce. If we were talking off camera, read a Gartner report, you could see a reduction in workforce of 5 to 10%. And wow, that's significant. That pays for a lot of these agents. Now, of course, the devil's in the details. Is are these agents really going to replace people? And then the issue is, are they employees, right? So look, in legal terms, an agent is a very specific legal entity. When an agent acts on your behalf, you're liable, right? He's your agent or it's your agent. Similar thing here, right? What about the liability of what agents do? Is that going to be the software producer who produced the agent is going to be liable? Is it going to be you because the agent isn't quote unquote employed by you? Are you going to be liable for it? Right? This opens up kind of a whole new can of worms for lawyers who are also rubbing their hands in glee. Lawyers love to get new cases of first impression here that we can, run up the flagpole. So I do think this is, in some respects, a brave new world, right? If you're a fan of robots and Asimov, you can take some lessons and cues from it. But do we need to put limits on what these agents can do? Right? Agents don't get sick. They can work 24/7, until they don't, right? Well, do agents have feelings? Do agents dream?
Well, nice Philip Dick reference. Hey,
Yeah.
this is so there's no timeline on this, but this is the end game, Alan. You were spot on. Salesforce and NVIDIA are discussing these things called digital workforces. I was just talking yesterday with a friend of mine who does consulting work with Salesforce. he's considered within Salesforce a Benioff whisperer, which is the reference to Mark Benioff. And even within Salesforce, they've developed a couple of these concepts. One of them is called the quiet erosion of entry-level jobs. So they're convinced that these AI-related jobs or tasks will replace the lower-level jobs. And they're actually referring to the agents as VEs or virtual employees. So we've got this. We also have this idea. I mean, not to get too cynical, but the federal government, what's happening with Doge, et cetera. I think some of the tasks they're going to try to find a way to replace the tasks of humans within government agencies with agents. I think Amazon's going to do this with warehouses. They've made it clear. They're dropping breadcrumbs everywhere. The only question is the time frame, but I think it's inevitable, and I think we're going to see a lot of losses of jobs where people can't adapt, which will create all sorts of union issues, all sorts of culpability issue, corporate governance. It's going to be wild.
You know, I'm sorry, go
In
ahead, Mike.
theory, you can argue the other side of this, though, right? So it's pretty clear that we may not have enough workers because the boomers are going to retire and there's not enough of the younger folks running around. So maybe we do need to have AI agents handle more things. And maybe the definition of what it means to be a worker, let's say knowledge worker, is replaced by somebody who's, a knowledge orchestrator or supervisor, and they are handling more things through their team of folks, and then we're all more collectively productive, but we may not have as many people in the first place.
I always wanted to be an orchestrator. Do I get a baton with that? No, that's different. That's an orchestra. So, Mike, you're right, but I'm reminded of a discussion we had earlier this week around the Apple $500 billion announcement. It's going to create 20,000 jobs. That's about 25 million a job. And by the way, I spoke about this Thursday on LinkedIn Live yesterday on my Shimmy Says. But the bottom line is, we talk about opening data centers and factories and all these things. But when the jobs in those data centers and factories are handled by agents, you're not creating the amount or the type of jobs that they may want in the heartland here, right? Those good assembly line jobs in those factory positions. Agents may do that. Robots are going to do that. And so, do we come to a Star Trek kind of world where humans really don't do menial labor and don't do physical labor, and and quite frankly, even a lot of service mental tasks can be handled by agents, aka writing software and all of these things. So, well, what do humans do? We can't just get fat and walk around on those chairs, right? We talked about this with Wally. What do we do?
Have I not told you my favorite stupid IT joke before? What's the future of the data center? It's one guy and a dog, and the dog is there to keep him from touching anything.
It's going to be a boy. It's going to be a boy and his dog. Another science fiction reference. But you're right, Mike. There's going to be there already is especially in the healthcare industry, a lack of doctors, optometrists, dentists. So AI, in a sense, and these agents and robotics will actually fill the gap there. So there is a good side that benefits all of us. But I just think that the problem is, given what our oligarchs in tech are doing these days, it's very hard for me to trust anything they say or any of their intentions. They're building these data centers. They're looking at ways to move forward in robotics and ways to maximize profits, because that's all I really care about, in my opinion. That at this point in time, that might change. And it's kind of where we're moving in terms of job displacement. And you're going to see more union activity around this and more strikes or threats of strikes.
So you think it's more displacement versus, excuse me, augmentation or enhancement? Because I see it, I guess I look at it from a different lens, from a messaging perspective, and what really needs to be very crisp there to explain how these agents are helping humans. But it sounds like you guys are thinking more there's going to be more displacement than there is enhancement.
Well, we talked about this previous show where we were, given Andreessen some grief about some of his comments, but one of the things that he said is, we're going to burn down the economy first and then rebuild it. Well, that's all right. Burn down the economy without a plan, though, results in a massive amount of disruption. And it's not too long
Even
before
with a plan,
the pitchforks are outside the White House.
even with a plan, burning down the economy is going to create lots of disruption. And when you're an oligarch sitting on a couple tens of billions of dollars, you can ride it through. Mr. and Mrs. America, who are voting for this, I think are in for a bit of a rude awakening, and we'll see where that goes. I mean, but here's the other flip side, though, too. I've never seen progress stop for feelings, for feel goods. Progress rolls on, and it stops for no man or woman or worker or country or economy. And if you could do it, they will. And
I will. Let me pose another
inevitable.
scenario. When you hire somebody, you're actually hiring them, and there are 15 digital assistants that they trained, and they are, a small army of people and agents that are as the new employee that you're hiring. And when they leave,
they're
you
alter
take your
egos.
with them.
Yeah, they're alter egos. But let's be clear. There's a difference between digital agents a la Salesforce, who are going to go do digital tasks on the net or on your network for you, versus robots that have AI embedded and are doing physical tasks. Right? This is a pincer movement here, right? Where they're attacking menial physical tasks, not attacking, but potentially replacing menial physical workers, at the same time replacing, let's call them, brain workers.
Well, let's go to the B block, because that's where we're going.
Absolutely. All right. You know what? That's a good one. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. I always wanted a Jetsons flying car. It looks like I'm going to get Rosie first. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
So as Alan noted, we are talking about robotics, and robots are coming to the home. Meta has signaled that it wants to build robots that will do everything from wash your car to do your laundry. And well, what could go wrong with all of that? But to Alan's point, we are seeing these. You could argue a robot is a form of an AI agent, and it's going to go do menial tasks. And this is part of that pincer movement. But what happens to all those folks who are doing those various tasks out there? I don't know. And I don't know how far away these robots are, but I can think of a few dozen things that might go wrong, including, well, is that robot sharing data about what's going on in, your laundry with some AI somewhere that then is going to pop it out somewhere in an interesting way? Will, what was little Susie doing with her boyfriend when they were supposed to be doing homework is suddenly going to pop up on a screen somewhere? I don't know, but
Shades of Monica Lewinsky. Only if you check the box that allows your robot to share that information back with Meta headquarters solely for the purpose of improving your laundry. But no one wants to air their dirty laundry on Techstrong Gang. But, look, guys, take a lesson from the internet. What industry led the way in breakthroughs on digital commerce, on video over the internet and everything else? The porn industry. They're liable to lead the way in this robotic industry as well, right? And I could only imagine what all hell breaks loose here. What? John, I'm
Oh, that's like a
sorry.
Westworld reference too? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Little
That
Westworld,
was
if
positive,
you
like
remember that. Yeah, that was a great series. Well, we'll come back to this, but you don't need a pretty guy, beefcake guy, or a pretty woman robot to wash the car, do the laundry, do your Rosie, like Jetson's Rosie's, electronic maid, do that kind of stuff. They don't even have to actually be humanoid, right? They don't have to have 2 eyes and a mouth. You don't have to look human. Whatever the most efficient form is to complete the particular task. I think the question is, and it's similar to the digital agent, are we going to have many different robots that are single function robots? Car washer that services multiple houses or something like that. Or do we have a jack of all trades robot, the English butler, so to speak, or Rosie, right? Who runs the dishwasher, runs the washing machine, washes the cars, tidies up the house, folds the clothes. Um, the beauty of it is if you've been following what's been going on in robotics over the years, and for most of us, it's just watching how nimble the robotic dog is, right? You could take out a leg and he still figures out how to balance himself, and how fast they run, and how much progress they've made in these robotic uh, mechanisms and mobility. But then you marry that to true AI, right? To a really good AI that's programmed to do certain tasks. Sky's the limit. I mean, think of, do I need, one of my big things is if we deport 12 million immigrants, all the fruit that's rotting in the fields, and John and Joe Smith from Kansas City aren't going to go out and do farm work. Well, if I got robots to do them, that really helps. That really helps.
I think
And
we're a long way from the single purpose or the multi-purpose robot. So I think we'll get there in phases. We'll have single purpose robots, then we'll wind up with this multi-purpose robot. But this is not all that far off in the sense that, there are reports that the Chinese are building millions of robots already. So
it's also, I mean, it's also happening here. I mean, there's a startup out here called Physical Intelligence, and one of its major investors is Jeff Bezos. And there are videos of what these specific robots do. Some wash dishes, some sort and box items. So it is going in that direction. Actually, when I recently went to Carnegie Mellon, the PhD students there were showing me their robots that did things as weird as like picking apples out of trees, using sound rather than visuals. It's happening, and a lot of the agriculture companies are working with the Carnegie Mellon folks about raising crops and picking crops. So you're right, Mike. This is a lot of specialization before we go to the multi-varied robots, but it's happening. I mean, I just don't know the time frame. And again, with Meta, I don't know if this is a concept they're talking about and how far along they are. I guess it depends on where they are, but physical intelligence actually is something that I think you're going to see elements of that being used within Amazon in their warehouses within a couple of years.
Definitely. We saw a lot of that at CES actually. Sorry guys. From an agriculture perspective, all the things that they're doing and working with robots to do special tasks to aid the humans. So that was a big theme at CES this year too.
so there are lots of undocumented workers out there who are doing a lot of these jobs for about, I don't know, 15 to 20 bucks an hour, we shall say. Um, so does the robot need to come in under that price, or am I going to have to buy the robot? I mean, going back to our earlier conversation about these AI agents, how does the cost of the robot get figured out? And maybe the robot will be too costly.
spoken like a true coastal elite, Mike. They're not paying those undocumented immigrants 15, 20 bucks an hour. Those people, you know what I mean? Come on down from Harrison, Dean. Um, those people are getting $5 to $7 an hour, unfortunately, and they're happy to get it, and that's what makes that world go round. But look, when you compare human labor to robotic labor, though, it's a no-win. The human can't win, right? Because the robot never gets sick. It could break, yes, but the robot doesn't get sick. The robot doesn't take days off. The robot doesn't steal. The robot doesn't hate you or love you or whatever. The robot can work 24/7 theoretically. And over time, that robot's going to get cheaper and cheaper as, scales of economy kick in. So, to say, oh, there's an actual comparison of cost, I think hands down, eventually the robot's got to win that game. But I'll tell you one
No, but
area.
there is,
Go ahead.
but there is, Ellen, just to be fair, there is a level of hesitancy among places like John Deere. The initial cost, the outlay is
Yes, it's
expensive
a
or something
CapEx.
prohibitive.
Yeah, it could be.
Unless you're a major company, it's gonna start with them. But yeah, you're right. The costs are dropping, but not exponentially. So that's the one
They
thing the
will.
humans have
I
going
mean,
for them.
a couple of issues. Number one, who's really out ahead and is just besides themselves with this? Our, to go back to the other day, we were talking about Ike and Eisenhower, our industrial military complex, because probably the first robots we're going to see are military robots, right? Clone Wars, warrior class robots who just follow orders. They don't have a conscience. And that's a whole new set of potential problems we need to be thinking about. The other thing though is, who really is going to be the robot? Who's going to make the robot that you buy for your house? Who's going to make your Rosie? Is it going to be a Google, a Meta, an Apple, one of the Mag 7 oligarchs, an Amazon? Or is there a chance for a new class to rise? A new group of U.S. robotics. Didn't they make the modems we use? Wouldn't it be great if U.S. robotics came back and we're using them for our robots in the house? But there's an opportunity there, and the question is, will the Metas of the world, who are making noise, and the Apples and the Amazons making noise, are they going to let new growth come in here, right? And that's sometimes why you need a government to calm the market at pure market forces, to make sure we don't get monopolized with this, and we do have innovation coming from new companies in this exciting new area.
You're right, though. You talked about. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Sorry, John. I was just going to say, I think that's a great point from a competitive perspective. How can smaller companies, those newer ones, leverage what the Metas, the Apples, the Amazons are doing from a robotics perspective to drive more innovation, to drive more competition? That's going to help drive prices down as well. But Alan, you bring up a great point there in terms of where is this innovation? We're seeing the leaders with some of those Mag 7 companies already, but it would be nice to see some of the smaller companies from an innovation perspective be able to bring up that competitiveness so that this becomes more of a cost-effective reality.
Oh, I'm just going to say, you mentioned the military. That's a great example. I mean, in addition to the porn industry, the military has always been kind of at the forefront in terms of using technology. When you mentioned robotics, it made me think about 20 years ago, I did this project with CNN, and it involved UAVs. And also, remember the Global Hawk, the Predator, these drones. There were underwater submarines that were robotic. They were done mainly to protect humans in terms of war. Yeah, right. I mean, they'll be used for something else. I'm sure, or already have been for all we know. But the whole idea, the whole concept, though, was to try to, as Eisenhower you mentioned earlier, a way to spend money on the military without spending it too much on people and more on technology, as we kind of go forward into this brave new world.
I think this is going to be a massive exercise in marketing, because the only robot that's coming into my house has to come from some brand that I trust, right? And it's not just going to be any random company. It's got to be somebody who I can feel like I can call up and say, come get this thing because it's going crazy.
No, but look, I'll give you, for instance, any of you guys use robotic vacuum cleaners in your house?
iRobot, it's exactly bingo.
What a great story the Roomba from iRobot was. My friend Brad Feldite was an investor in that early on. And that, there was it was one of those 10-year overnight successes, right? It took a long time to get that technology right. And it's relatively dumb technology if you've used it, right? But people, that's worked its way in. Is a brand that people didn't Amazon buy that one, John?
Yes.
Now of course it's part of Amazon.
I think I have one in the attic somewhere. I think we stopped using it just because.
Well, no, I have one here in the office. I brought it in from the house because our previous dog Sandy used to hate it. She'd chase it around biting it, and she cracked her canine teeth on it, and she had that fang look. So when we got the new puppy now, I immediately took it out of the house because I didn't need any more cracked teeth. I had to pay for enough orthodontist work for my children. I don't need it for my dogs. But yeah, I don't know how good they are, to tell you the truth. Dyson never came out with one. How good could they be?
Mike brings up a great point on trust, though. Sorry, John, on customer trust. You're saying, like, looking at, the Apples, the Amazons, the Metas that we're buying products from, and where we are the product versus somebody that's unknown. So maybe there's collaboration between some of these larger companies and some of the smaller ones to drive that innovation. But you bring up a great point, because from a marketing perspective, it's all about earning customer trust and retaining it. That's just table stakes to driving revenue.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, I trust Samsung a lot more than I do Hewlett Packard. You know what I mean?
What kind of American are you? I'm kidding.
As American with good taste in terms of technology.
But they haven't. I didn't see them at the White House pledging a couple of $100 billion.
Well, then half the country
day
thinks
is young.
then half the country is going to trust them more. I don't know.
What can I tell you? Anyway, hey, let's take a break. We're going to come back. Little bye-bye, Miss American Pie. Well, actually, it's UK Pie this time. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, we're back, and it was kind of an amazing stunt. About 1,000 or so artists in the UK, music artists, got together, released an album, and there was no music on it. And they were basically protesting this law that's being considered in the UK that will allow anybody who has an AI thing just to use copyrighted content to train that AI and not have to actually compensate anybody. And of course, all the artists in the UK are flipping out about this, and it's not just going to be music, I suspect. But John, you've been following this for years now. What's going on here?
Yes, so it's more content creators against AI, right? It's it's interesting, this concept of this album, which was called "Is This What We Want?" There were a dozen recordings of empty studios and performance spaces, and with the likes of Kate Bush, Annie Lennox. And I remember also a couple of weeks ago, Paul McCartney had talked to the BBC, and he had said this interesting quote. He says, "The truth is the money's going somewhere. When it gets on the streaming platforms, somebody is getting it, and it should be the person who created it. It shouldn't be some tech giant somewhere." And again, what's especially heinous to the artists in this case is that this considered plan or law, AI law, copyright law, would allow tech companies to use copyrighted material to help train AI models unless the creators themselves explicitly opt out. And I think there are already laws there. I mean, based on what I've read, the copyright law already kind of covers this. But the fact is, you have to actively protect your own rights, which is going to be almost impossible. This opt-out proposal has been met with scorn from opponents who say there's no evidence of a watertight rights reservation process anywhere in the world. So I suspect we're going to see this cascade beyond music and into film and into writing, into even our stories, into everything imaginable. Again, it's quite interesting in the amount of force that the artists in the UK took. I applaud, because I think they're making the Labour Party, which is thinking of this plan, kind of reconsider it. I mean, it's a story that's fluid, but I think there's been enough resistance where I think we might see some sort of action. But again, this is something that we've seen in Hollywood with writers. We see it with voice actors. I mean, they're being replaced, especially voice actors. That's one of the worst areas, where you can replicate their voice and basically use the AI voice instead of the human and not pay the human. So again, it just bears repeating. I think it's a really important story.
But it's also authors. It's not just musicians, it's authors, it's artists, it's newspaper publishers. And then we have companies like OpenAI saying, hey, we can't train our models without copyrighted materials. So this war, and you mentioned some of the big names, Paul McCartney, Elton John, for example, as well as a lot of smaller artists. And what I thought was interesting was that the 12 tracks on this album of Silence spell out the British government must not legalize music theft to benefit AI companies. And they're really, these creatives are really speaking for all all creative industries globally. We're seeing it obviously rise up here in the UK, but it's the creatives saying we need to be protected and compensated. And but the big open AI companies saying we can't train the models without your copyrighted materials.
So so Alan, did the politicians sell out the content providers here essentially for money?
Everybody wants to ride the AI train, to quote some song, right? Everybody wants to ride the train. But you look, the fact of the matter is, there is a long, bloody history of large companies exploiting artists for their own capital benefit, right? If you're familiar with the Bruce Springsteen lawsuit back in the day, several others. Now, we had a bit of a revolution with digital. All of a sudden, the recording industry, the record labels, they stopped holding the power because everything was streaming and payments. Now artists can get royalties directly from the streaming providers, Spotify's and so forth of the world. Though there's still a place for labels, it's just not, like what it was when we were younger, let's say. But this is true. Now, I thought, John, that the AFTRA and the Hollywood strikes with the writers and actors, that you could not use voice and duplicate one's voice without permission. As a matter of fact, I believe it came out that when James Earl Jones passed away, he had sold the digital rights to his voice so they can continue doing Darth Vader and some of the other roles, iconic roles that he played, that his voice is the role. And he sold his estate sold that for a pretty penny. Similar to the Bela Lugosi case, which originally said artists have rights to their images. Artists have rights to their voice. Artists have rights, to their likeness, unless it's satire. Now, but this really begs the question. I mean, think about what you said, Lisa. OpenAI says, well, we can't train our models without copyrighted material. They acknowledge this is copyrighted material. Well, thanks for telling me that, because that's why I thought my copyright was valuable. Otherwise, I would have just let you use it. You know what I mean? You hear people crying with 2 loaves of bread under their arm about, why can't we use copyrighted material so we can make money? honestly, the nerve of them to actually make that argument and expect us to have sympathy for them. Have we gone bonkers? I didn't see them at the White House pledging any. Actually, he did. He did pledge money. All right, he pledged money, no tariffs, he can do whatever he wants, right? But honestly, what are we coming to here? If copyright and IP means nothing, what's our beef with the Chinese? That was always the thing. They don't respect our IP. Well, if we don't, my grandmother always told me, if you don't respect yourself, don't expect other people to respect you. We don't respect our IP, other people won't either. So I say more power to these musicians. And it's funny how these things always take place in the UK and the EU, where they seem to still have a sense of individual rights, and they haven't sold out to the oligarchy quite yet. But more power to them.
So, John, will the artists, of which many are native to Great Britain, and Great Britain has driven rock and roll and all this other stuff, will they just leave that whole country, and will they say, we're not going to put our product and make it available in the UK because it's going to be stolen by AI companies?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's in a sense, it has happened before because of the taxation in Britain. A lot of artists left the country, relocated to France, Switzerland, United States to avoid that. So there is precedence. And in terms of recording, you can record anywhere. I think the British government probably is stepping back and thinking, Jesus, what have we gotten ourselves into, and trying to figure out a compromise. Like all these things usually we try to do, at least with so much power that's been represented by these artists. But I think there's a very good chance that they leave. Yeah, I think it could happen.
But practically speaking, okay, so they pick up and move to the south of France, or to the Dakota building in New York City or whatever, right? Does that stop the British government from allowing the AI companies to use their music to train their models to make good music?
Well, I think it sends a message to the government, and when you have the megastars leave, which impacts an industry and the economy in a certain sense, maybe it does, and maybe they rethink what they did. I mean, that's, I guess, the leverage you have. But I understand your point.
Those guys generate a lot of taxable revenue for the UK, so that will just disappear. And then their recording companies might just say, we're not gonna let any station or any outlet in the UK have the next album because the other stuff's already out. So that horse is out of the barn door, but anything new they could theoretically lock down. And then maybe, I don't know, Malta sets up and says, hey, we're going to welcome all you guys here to live, and we'll have friendly courts for you to pursue these cases, and we'll tax your revenue less than the UK did. And for Malta, it'll be a huge win. I don't know. I'm making that up, but theoretically.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to throw this out too. Maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole, but the whole thing with Taylor Swift re-recording all of her albums in terms of owning the rights to that. I mean, I'm not sure about the particulars, but the fact is, if you are big enough and strong enough as an artist, you can flex your muscle and have a fair amount of influence, especially if you have somebody like McCartney, who, when I lived in England, the joke was he made a pound a second from royalties alone. This is, I mean, it has a lot of weight behind it.
We shall see. We shall see. And this isn't just a UK thing, right? Because what are you going to do? Not allow the AIs in the UK? I mean, and what about the EU and the US and the BRIC countries and the rest of them?
So what happens when the artists say there'll be no concerts in the UK either? Because remember, people want to go to the experience, and I don't really want to sit at a concert and watch a digital robot. So, there's a lot of leverage here.
Hey, don't knock it till you tried it, until you walked a mile in those shoes. Talk to the porn guys. But no, I mean, so that is one way where, like, I don't know if moving out of the country gets them what they want, but refusing to perform in the country I think that'll put the screws to them a little bit.
That happened in South Africa. Remember all those
yeah.
years where no major artists would
Yeah,
go to
yeah. Well, they
South
tried. They
yeah.
tried it in Israel too. The boycott, divest, whatever it's called. I tried to pressure artists not to perform in Israel.
Yep.
And
If you live
But
in the
but at
UK
least
and you
backfired.
want to see a concert, you're going to have to go to Dublin. That's all there is to it.
I'd rather go there. The thing too is it's just as you said, Alan. In Europe, they do value copyrights, privacy, their personal data, and they're so far ahead of people. They're so far ahead of us. Uh, I just can't imagine something like that happening in the U.S. to this extent.
Not as long as they pledge some money for AI data centers.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Hey, let's wrap up our Friday. This was a good panel today with some great topics. We hope you've enjoyed this at home. We have, of course, our usual Techstrong TV schedule right behind us here on the gang. So stay tuned right here on this Bat channel, and you'll be able to see that. Of course, you could also catch Techstrong Gang on techstrong.tv. You can watch past episodes. You can also catch it on our YouTube channel, our Techstrong TV YouTube channel. It's on there, as well as on your favorite podcast platforms. Right? It's probably you could probably being used to be trained for that open AI thing too. But it's on Apple Podcast and Spotify and the rest. But until Monday, we'll be back with lots of great new content Monday. This is Alan Schimmel on behalf of Techstrong Gang and Techstrong. Have a great weekend, everyone. We're out of here.